All right, there we're live again. So we we did our intro. We did our USR spiel. We have Ashley Dezan with us, who I'm very excited to talk to today. But I also want to say, as far as the podcast that happened the day before Thanksgiving, shame on you guys for lying on Nick and Uncle Mike. We never mention names. Anyone who wants to know the truth, all you got to do is go back and look at Monitor Brains podcast #1, and that's where it all stems from. And man, don't think so highly of yourself that I'm picking out any single person. It's the thing. I have no problem with people. I have problem with grocery store diet and processed foods. That's the bottom line. I don't have no issues with anybody. Do you? I'll do me. And there you go. I care about these animals. That's all. So with that being said, all that drivel out of the way, Ashley.
Yeah.
How you doing, my friend?
Pretty good. How about yourselves?
Good. So we're having a bit of a great white north here today. I mean, we're getting a blizzard right now. So
that's kind of funny. Way more north, and there's like no snow on the ground still. I mean, it's hard to see. We can still see grass over there.
Wow, man, you got a nice spot too. It's beautiful. So what I really wanted to talk to you about is, I go a long way back with this, and back in the day, it was very hard to find captive-born animals, and 90% of everything that we had to work with was all wild caught. And with the wild caughts, you're never going to get an import of wild caught animals. And hold on a second. And all right, am I back? There we are. So you're never going to get imported, and I'm staying in my lane here because I deal with monitor lizards. So monitor lizards, they come in, Kat can attest to this. They come in with their parasite load, some dehydration, maybe some skin issues that all need to be, rectified. So with that being said, with you importing, and I know nowadays you're actually importing captive-born Indonesian stuff, which is very cool. So what's your protocol when you first get your imports in? And I'm not talking about the captive-born stuff. I'm strictly talking wild-caught, farm-bred, or any of that stuff. Do you have a regimen for, establishing them before you put them out?
So it's a little bit more complex than that. So I am going to briefly talk on the captive-born stuff, just very briefly to get to that point. So you guys know I do mostly Europe importation, and that's 90% captive bred. Most of it's long-term captive, except for the odd thing that are usually lizards or frogs. So what I've decided to do, like with Indonesia, for example, because there's obviously a very good chunk of wild caught, and in turn with the captive born and bred stuff from Indo, there's going to be a mingle going on with wild caught. So you kind of have to almost treat it similar, but know they're a little stronger. And it's just more ethical that way too with the captive bred stuff. But because of that, so last year the shipment came a little, or I guess this past couple months, it wasn't last year. The shipment came a little later than anticipated, which at the end it was a good thing. I decided here on in anything with mass wild caught should be end of the year to prevent any cross contamination with like the Europe stuff, for example. So I had the Europe stuff come throughout the entire year. And then end of year comes Indonesia, which will be like between September and November. And that way I have the entire winter to like just sanitize everything, start fresh, new cages as needed, whatever, right? So that way there's no chance of cross-contamination that way. When it comes to acclimation, it heavily depends what it is. A lot of the stuff here, when it comes through, if it's like this last, again, Indonesian shipment, all the snakes got mite treatment immediately as soon as they came out of the bag. Like most of them, I would say 95% of the animals were clean. Like they had no mites, no obvious visual issues at all, but they all got preventative mite treatment. So what I use is, I'm going to butcher the name of this, but a foxliner. Yeah, so NexGard. Essentially, I just can't pronounce the name properly. So it's an oral medication that my vet allowed me to use for the snakes, and it basically kills the mites within 12 hours, and it's good for about 28 days in their system. So that way I did that with all the snakes. They were all good. Like literally within 24 hours, when I checked like everybody carefully, I couldn't find a single live mite. So, which was amazing. Anything that is sometimes dehydrated, like I will hydrate them. My vet, she provides me with sodium. I guess it'd be sodium chloride, for subcutaneous injection for fluids, and then I just observe as needed. If they need a Panacur dose of any sort, then they will be getting that as well. I don't like to treat for parasites, like internal parasites, unless it's absolutely necessary, because these animals are not mine. I do basically I pre-order for people as like a broker between seller and the buyer in this case. Okay. I do bring in some things for resale and they get more further treatment, but all the pre-booked animals, they get mite treatment, they get fluids as needed, and they all get fed as needed. Snakes heavily depends how long they're with me, because obviously you don't want to get them, feed them, ship them out right away, because then you're risking regurgitation issues. All lizards, all frogs get fed the same day they arrive, assuming it's not the middle of the night. Otherwise, it'll be the next day. And I feed them quite heavily for the following days before they ship out. They all have like UVB. They all have their basking. Like even the snakes get UVB here. So I just want to try and keep them as healthy as possible before they move on to their new homes. The ones that stay with me, they all get internal treatments over the course of, it depends what it is, like Panacur, it's every 14 days you do a treatment. And I only do that once they're settled with me. Like I don't do it right away, because at that point you're just introducing a toxin into the body, which the animals are already super stressed.
Yeah.
You don't want to introduce something that's going to potentially stress them out even more. So I go as needed. And once I know they're settled, they get their medication.
Right. Well, that's good to know. With that being said, that even after they are brought in, and with your subsequent regimen of whatever you need to do to get that animal into the best shape possible, there still may be something for the hobbyist or the end buyer to actually do for these animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do what I can in that case. But yeah, other than that, like moving forward, like I learned a lot this shipment, because normally I don't do wild caught animals for the most part. I try to avoid it just because my vision is to deal with ethical treatment and captive breeding of animals, and to help promote that. So this Indonesian shipment was an exception because of how heavily captive bred stuff are, and the fact anything wild caught tends to be taken care of for several months to acclimate before it even comes to me. So that was a huge bonus. Everything came in phenomenal to me. Like obviously you have the odd issues that come with wild caught Indonesian stuff, to be expected, but compared to what it could be, it was really, really good. Obviously there's always going to be the hidden.
Could you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, why do you, tell us why you personally, would rather not, deal with all the wild caught stuff. Like, what are some issues that you have seen, or like ethical concerns, because we really want to, we're always promoting captive bred if you can, and things like that. So like, I think you would be a great person to tell people, well, why is that, right? So that's what we want to hear from you. So what have you noticed? What have you seen in your experience?
So it's kind of ironic. So my own personal collection is probably a minimum 50% wild caught animals. And there's a reason behind this. I generally do not sell out my own collection just because of the risks involved. I personally deal with animals that need captive breeding. They need to be understood. They're animals that people want, but every time they purchase them, they die, like 90% of the time. And people aren't understanding why. And this goes across a whole board of many, many wild-caught animals. Now, there's a few groups like pythons, boas, most monitors, some geckos. They do very well, regardless they're wild-caught or not. Personalities may differ, but they do pretty good. My field of importation is not the common stuff. I deal with a lot of obscure, uncommon, once-in-a-lifetime species that come through, whether I'm brokering or someone contacts me for some, like an animal they found in Europe or whatever. So when it comes to that kind of theme, we'll say, or genre, those wild-caught animals are very sensitive and they don't bode well more often than not in captivity. So I try and not promote the wild-caught side of things for that reason, just because, again, it's the field I deal with. It's not just your common everyday stuff. And your common everyday stuff shouldn't even need to come in wild-caught anyway at this point.
Exactly.
So there's no point. So I focus on things that need to be captive born and bred that I know in the future people are really going to want. So this way it helps prevent consistent importation of wild-caught animals that are probably going to die. So I try and pick and choose who these animals go to. So if some random Joe Blow messages me like, hey, I want 5 Borneo oxycephalum, like the red-tailed green rat snakes from Borneo specifically, I'm probably going to say no. And the reason behind that, you have your red-tailed green rats from Malaysia. They're very hardy. You have the ones from Indo. They're pretty okay. You still have your problems with them, but they're not as hardy as the Malaysians. And then you have your Borneo locality ones, and they're a different breed, we'll say. So I focus heavily on Borneos, and I've been producing them fairly consistently in the last while. But as every other Borneo keeper has had the same exact problem. They all come with pentastomes. So it's basically lungworm, and you can't get rid of it. Like, if you want to really get rid of it, you have to give them ivermectin. And with that, you have an 80% chance of killing the snake because the worms die in the lungs. They go septic. We all know what happens from there, right? So basically, you got to keep the snake as stress-free as possible. Hope to God you get captive bred babies out of them sooner than later, and then start moving from there. And it's just, I don't want to say it's a common Gonyosoma issue, but for whatever reason, the Borneo locality, they're very, very sensitive. I don't know if it's something to do with all the travel or what it is, but they're just prone to up and die. They succumb to it very easily. They usually don't, it sucks to say this, but they usually don't last more than a year if they do well, maybe 2.
Oh.
Yeah, because every time whether they lay eggs, whether it's a temperature drop, like any sort of body stress, flares them. So, and it comes across as a respiratory infection, and many people think, oh, wow, red-tailed green rat snakes get respiratory infection easily when they're wild caught, but that's actually not what it is. It's just the symptoms of the worms, the parasites causing issues. Now with that, it's transmissible, but it's not like super easily transmissible, like let's say mites or whatever. It's contained to that snake and that snake only, unless you're shoving mucus and poop down another snake's mouth, which is not going to happen. But it's just stuff like that becomes really complex, and I don't want to send those types of animals to people that don't quite understand what they're getting themselves into. Those people who want them need to have a vet that understands thoroughly what's going on, or the buyer themselves needs to have medical background or understanding of what's going on, so they can have a vet that helps support them. And so that's what goes on with myself and my vet, is that we kind of work together to help the species essentially succeed, right?
Right.
And there's many animals that way, whether it's lizard, whether it's snake, frog. I mean, maybe to not that severe degree, but just similar concepts where they're very fragile. And I just
So
want to promote that.
Can I
Without-
just say something really quick?
Yeah, go ahead,
There's
Kat.
2 super chats, and I don't want to forget people. Okay, so Jason Pester Contracting and also Mike Rummel sent super chats. So thank you
Hey,
guys.
thank you, guys. So, well, with that being said, Ashley, I wanted to say, like, importing wild caught animals. I agree. It's definitely a double-edged sword. I mean, for the common person coming into this or whatever, it's always best to get captive born for obvious reasons. And then there's always that. So like for example, I see people breeding Savannah monitors and Nile monitors, and now they're trying to compete, captive born against very inexpensive wild caught animals. However, I try to tell people that you're saving money on that animal initially. However, if you're not the kind of person who don't really care about animals and it's not a throwaway species and you just bought it for your son because it was $15, if you're really, concerned with the species and you love your little whatever, Savannah monitor, Asian water monitor, wild caught, whatever the case may be, and you do care, now you're going to bring that animal to a vet.
Yeah.
You're going to go into the lobby and already you're 500 in the hole and you haven't even talked to the doctor yet. Now the doctor puts hands on it. He gives his analysis. He does his swabs and smears and stuff like that. Now you're getting close to 1,000. So now you're 1,015 on that animal. And God bless if you do happen to that animal recovers. You're still, you would have been better off paying $150 for a captive born because you still may lose that wild caught animal. So I totally agree with you, and I understand, and I know Kat does too. There's wild caught animals that should go, and again, I'm not putting anybody up on a pedestal, but if they go to the proper person and they do all the right things for it, and then they captive born, like for example, I guess the quickest example I can think of right now is my Togianus. Very rare animal, and I mean it's so rare. I hate to see people take them out of the wild and then they die. So I actually captive produced Varanus Togianus, and that's my goal is I started with like 6 animals, and I'm actually have 3 captive borns now that I'm me and Nick are working with, and I would love nothing more than to produce them and make them available. I know they're not for everybody, and that's fine and well, but as long as we could produce enough to where people aren't taking them out of the wild, that's the end goal, is just to leave them in the wild, certain species.
Yeah, and when it comes to taking out the wild too, like if there's enough animals in captivity, someone that breeds them exceptionally well should be one of the very few people that could take the odd wild caught from bloodline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess I don't know if I made this point clear or not, but so I think for a newer hobbyist or a novice or maybe not quite advanced and willing to do the crazy stuff that we do for these animals, you should always buy captive born. However, I'm not against wild caught either, because without the wild caught animals, new blood and things like that, that's just benefiting the captive breeding, which in return is going to benefit the wild animals.
Yeah.
We had just did a talk with Tom Crutchfield, and we were talking about that, and we were talking about like his famous saying is conservation through commercialization, and a lot of people hear that, and they think it's like greed, and it's really not greed. We have one little answer to conservation, and that's our effort to help conserve these animals that need to be wild. And then I see somebody jump down his throat and we're saying, oh yeah, that animal would rather be out in the wild. But wait a minute, you're cutting down hectares and hectares of land to make palm oil plantations. Now, so we offer our solution, captive breeding. What's your solution? I mean, until we stop decimating the wild, all of this is in vain. There's this the skin and fur trade. There's bush meat, which, hey, do what you got to do. You live there, you eat it, cool. But the leather trade, that's all way habitat destruction in the leather trade. I think is a bigger problem than collecting for the hobby when you have good people who are actually putting in the effort to captive breed these animals. Okay,
Yeah.
rant over. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's okay. When it comes to the wild caught stuff, 'cause I'm adding to this actually, a lot of people don't even realize when they say, oh, they belong in the wild. Sure, yeah, I agree. But these animals that are available sit in homes of the origins catcher. It's not like the wholesaler in, I don't know, California contacts the exporter, then the exporter and wherever they're from contacts another person to find this. It's rarely the case. Usually they're finding people that already have them as pets sitting around in a home. No, I'm sure there's the odd catcher or whatever, but more often than not, they're animals that are already in captivity and will stay in captivity until they're purchased. So it's not great, but they're not in the wild.
Right.
Regardless. So you might as well try and help the animal, help the species, be captive born and bred. So that doesn't keep happening. And eventually people will be like, oh, well, no one's buying it anymore. So it stays in the wild.
Yep. So with that being said, I kind of want to, I'm a monitor guy, no doubt about it. I mean, I have some wild caught emerald tree boas, which my anaconda female Thanksgiving Day, oh, I was so disappointed. She slugged out for me, 14 slugs.
No.
Yeah, but that's all right. I bring devil eggs to Thanksgiving and everybody ate them and they thought they were great. They didn't know what they were. So it was a win-win. That was a joke.
Yeah.
So Ash, you're getting stuff from Chris Applin now, right? Yeah, tell us about that. Tell us about the monitors.
So the monitors, oh my Lord. Like even some of like the long-term captive stuff, they weren't tree monitors or other species, where you would think they're captive bred or beyond that. Like the quality was impeccable. I was so impressed. Like the tree monitors, the biggest one that came in were like maybe this big.
Nice.
Yeah, I'd say maybe like the biggest with tail was like 14, 15 inches because there was several months old at that point because like they hatch in January and you have staggered clutches from there of different sizes, but they were fantastic. We actually kept a Prasinus back from that shipment and it's already tripled in size in the last 2 months. Like it eats like a freaking horse. It's beautiful. Like you have again, even if they're captive bred, like they live outside. So you have to expect things, whether it's monitor, whether it's snake, like you have to expect some parasites. You got to expect some bacterial issues once in a blue moon. But in this case, like there was like the odd tick or whatever. And you just deal with it because they're kept outside and where they should be realistically and getting the best care possible. And I was blown away about the quality of them. And I am very excited to work with them down the road in the future. Because like as a general rule, when you look at Indonesia and all the farms, everybody has the same issues, whether they're captive bred, whether they're captive farmed, whether they're wild caught. You have to expect the same risks, whether it's parasite, whether it's viral, whether it's bacterial. Like it's just how it is, especially with animals being kept outside in their native range, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Chris does his very best to try and make sure that stuff is
taken care of, covered.
Basically as much as possible. Yeah. And of course, the issues do arise, they do come, but we work on making sure we can prevent that in the future. But on initial import, I was so excited and so happy to see everything that came in. And I've been a part of several Indo shipments in the past, whether it was directly to Canada or indirectly through Europe, and I've never seen anything better than what this one was. Despite all the minimal issues to expect, it was great. Like we unpacked about 437 animals within 3 hours. Got them all housed and everything, and almost all the monitors ate. All the lizards really ate immediately. So they were just like, oh, it was 18 hours of flying and travel. Big long nighttime. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, I go way back to where, the way Chris Applin, and he's a great guy, he's a great breeder, and you can't say enough good things about Chris. But I can remember back in the day, Kat, in the early 90s and whatnot, even before that like, wild caught was wild caught. And then they started with the farm bred, where they were just, during the breeding season, they were grabbing gravid females and then, collecting their eggs. And then I would assume they would re-release the adults. I don't know. But just to see some of the holding conditions that was back then compared to the way Chris does things, a bare cement vat, with a little bit of water and they hold them until they met the quota. That was very, very hard. So I think even on that front, it's getting better now.
Yeah, I completely. He puts so much effort into making sure his animals have the best enclosures possible.
Yeah.
Like despite any potential issues there may be, that again go across all farms no matter what, he does his due diligence and he's an extremely ethical breeder, seller, whatever you really want to call farm, I guess, in this case. And I'm very, very happy to work with him.
That's funny that you say that, because just a second ago when we were talking and I said farm hatched or farm bred, back then that was just a lie. But now, I know of Chris Applin and I don't know of any other like Indo breeders, but if they were all farmed the way Chris does it, man, that it would be night and day as far as imports, So
I just want to ask a question. One of our, I guess, people that are watching right now. So I think they're asking Ashley, what issues have you had and what do you do to prevent them? And I'm assuming in getting the animals, and probably related to more of diseases, illness, things like that.
I can't say it happens terribly often with the European stuff. Like they're usually fairly straight to the point. You get the odd situation if it's a seller I usually don't work with, like if it's something another person found. You might get the odd mites or some dehydration. That's really just about it. But that's quite easy to deal with. Just isolating the animal, treating them, away they go. And I give the buyer a heads up of like, hey, by the way, this is what's going on. Keep extra precaution while they're in quarantine, but I have treated them. When it comes to wild-caught Indonesian stuff, so moving forward, I did this, I said this earlier, but I did this for this last shipment too. Indonesia was the very last import of the year, again, for sanitary reasons and cross-contamination. So there's always risk of mites, and that happened. There's going to be minor dehydration issues. That's easy to fix with fluids. Mm-hmm. The odd face rub, you just polyspore and make sure they're calm and collect and get that healed over. And then, of course, you'll have your bacterial viral issues. Bacterial is antibiotic treatment once you figure out what the actual issue is. And by that point, you figure out what kind of medication you could use. It's not just straight across the board. Right. There is some medication like ceftazidime that covers a huge broad spectrum of issues, but doesn't cover everything either. Yeah. And sometimes, like I mentioned before, with respiratory infections, it's not always a bacterial problem. It could be viral. It could be pesticides. What the heck? Parasites. It could be whatever, and it's just a symptom, end of the day, of an underlying issue. So then you got to figure that out. So this last shipment with Indo was more of a test trial, make sure it went great. overall, but like some underlying issues popped up here and there, and as to be expected, like after the animals went to homes. So moving forward, we're going to be doing tests on all the like snakes and stuff that come through to make sure they have no viral issues or bacterial issues that are quite obvious that we don't see. So that'll be our way of trying to, I don't want to say prevent it, because tests come back negative sometimes, or false negatives when it's not the case, but we're going to do our due diligence to protect the buyers and the snakes as much as possible. So aside from all the obviously treatments, like if there's mites or the odd wound or something that it's easy to deal with on the spot, a lot of things are going to get tested for various different things and move on from that. So that doesn't mean people should prevent and stop quarantine, though. As mentioned, there's false negatives that do pop up with things, depending what you're testing for. So quarantine is an absolute must no matter what. But
how long do you recommend?
Minimum 3 months. And if you're very serious with your animals, like in Indonesia, nidovirus is a huge, I don't want to say huge problem, but it's a common issue, and you can't avoid it. No matter who you buy from, you can't avoid it, and it's a gamble. Especially especially with arboreal pythons. It's very common in the green tree side of things, and that's actually mainly what I'm referring to when we do like tests, when they come into shipment, like everyone's getting swabbed and all the tests are going out before any animals go to new homes. And then whatever the tests come back as per animal, we figure it out from there and move on. But I'm trying to figure what was I getting at that point?
Well, let me. I'm not sure what you were getting at, but maybe
it was something she said.
It. So, as a monitor guy, and I love my monitor lizards, and they're very, of course, they could come in problematic, but they're very strong in my opinion, and I don't see. And I could be totally wrong because I'm no vet, but in all of my years of experience, I am so grateful that, as far as to my knowledge, that there's no like my Bolins that I have here. One had got a respiratory, and I bring it to Dr. Barajas over here at Mayfair Animal Hospital. He's a really great vet, and he done a smear of. So Nido, and then there was 2 other like really detrimental python diseases or whatever. What? So my bull and I came back clean, but man, those few days I was waiting for that test. I don't really know about Nido or those other 2 diseases. So, and I just think, God, monitor lizards don't, as far as I know, don't get something like that. So, like, how detrimental is in pythons or snakes, like Nido and those other 2 things that they test for?
So nidovirus affects more or less boids. Prevalently will be pythons. Doesn't affect lizards, doesn't affect geckos, doesn't affect frogs. So,
but they still may be able to get it.
No.
Well, there's other illnesses and diseases that geckos and other, species are more prone to, and we're still learning, we are still learning all the viruses and things like that out there. Like even on my end, I've seen some stuff, and, my vet has no idea what it is because we just haven't, the science isn't there yet,
Correct.
But yeah, Ashley, go ahead. You continue.
Oh, you're good. So Nido is more python prevalent with arboreal pythons, like the green trees. Like, of course, like a white-lipped python could get it, ball python could get it. There's hearsay, like this day and age, freaking fruit fly, like ball python collections likely have them, and there's been several proven to have them, and to the point where people separate their negatives with their positives. So, and the reason why I bring this up is some animals are asymptomatic with nidovirus. However, you can breed them, they live just fine, and they produce babies that are not carriers of nidovirus. So the babies are perfectly fine. It's just the snake could have a flare up of a severe respiratory infection, ultimately pass away.
So the nido rears its ugly head as a respiratory infection?
Correct.
Okay.
And how people like forever thought, oh, it's just a respiratory infection, whatever. Then realizing, oh, antibiotics doesn't work, so maybe it's just resistant. And then a new type of antibiotic is used, still doesn't work. So this is what I was saying before, where a respiratory infection is more of a symptom of an actual issue, underlying issue. So a lot of the times that'll just be the case where in a general household pet, it's likely just going to be a bacterial issue. But when it comes like to the green trees or whatever directly from Indonesia, whether they're captive farm, captive bred, wild caught, husbandry otherwise is spot on. There's no obvious issues, no sickness, no wounds, no like anything like that. There's a chance it's nido, and that's something you should get checked out. Sometimes the snakes could fight it off. Sometimes they're stuck with it forever. Sometimes they just die from it. It is contagious, but it's not like, oh my God, everything is gonna blow up and get it contagious. Like usually it has to be transferred by whether it's a mite or a tick or mucus or fecal, or if you're feeding with the same stats over and over and over again, or take a rodent out of one person's cage or one animal's cage and put it into another. That's your means of
Cross-contamination.
Cross-contamination, thank you. So that's basically it's the risks.
See, and I have no clue about nido, and I don't really follow the python, and I follow emerald tree boas a little bit because I have them and I love them. Yeah. But I can't say nothing to nobody about them because I'm really green in the green boa world. But the things, and this is probably going back maybe 2 years ago, the whole nido thing was like, oh my God, nido. But it almost seems like now I mean, of course, nobody wants nido in their collection, but it's not this big death sentence that used to be, or is it?
Yes and no. Basically, quarantine appropriately, keep your animal as stress-free as possible, get them tested. If they do well, just keep them in a separate area completely, and you could still treat them as your pets, you can still breed them, just keep them stress-free. And that way, once you get the babies out of them,
then you're good.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. Now, anyone that does importations from Indonesia, especially green tree pythons, at this point, like you're just saying, it's been like 2-3 years now, everybody's aware of it. Everybody knows this is a risk when you get these animals because it's impossible to not get it. Like even honestly, captive bred situations, like I said, some ball python collections are known to be positive with it. It's not even just Indo. Like you have to be well aware of this with any python species you purchase. End of the day, obviously, captive bred like within a different country is much less likely. But as a general purchaser, like all the green tree community, for example, when I was speaking to them a few weeks ago about this, they're like, "Oh yeah, like it's just something we expect. Like we keep these animals expecting the issues they come with, and it's a pleasant surprise if they don't have it." And we know how to work around it the best we can if they do. So it's a very long quarantine period, make sure for the best, and then move forward from there. And it's just like with me and like let's talk about with the oxycephalum, like the Borneo locality, I expect the worst. But in order to get them captive breeding and going,
you gotta do it.
Issues I have to expect to deal with and do my best.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I got a question.
Go ahead, Kat.
Question. So the question is, so did you have any that came with this recent shipment?
Yeah.
Talking about the birds.
Yeah, absolutely did. And that's what I was referring to when we know some things were popping up after the fact. But every person that purchased green trees for the purpose of breeding and understanding like how the animal works knew this was a risk. And they let me know. And when I was speaking about this with the exporter, Chris, we decided here on in, we're just going to test everything that comes in. It doesn't leave my place until we test.
Well, I mean, being the, I don't know, it's, I don't even know the word I'm trying to think of, but it would almost seem that it would be nice to test them
Yeah,
over there.
you can't though.
Why is that?
They just don't have the means of being able to
Okay,
do that. That's the problem. So
I got you.
yeah, we wish that was the
But in a
case.
perfect world, that would be the right
Yeah,
situation.
exactly.
But we
So,
ain't
but
there
we
yet.
come up with a method of if there's any positives or negatives, what we do moving on from there. Like obviously, if they're positive, we'll not be sending the animal to the prospective buyer.
Now,
And
let me ask you this: if like we all know, I mean, not we all, but people who are in this and they're buying shipments of wild caught animals, I mean, you gotta have some kind of knowledge of risk, and you know, with where was I going with that? So with that being said, um, you know, is it still worth it bringing them in? I mean, you know, I'm not a Python guy, so I have no clue.
it's,
But I think, like I said with my Togianus, being that they're so rare, and I don't really think they should be taken out of the wild. However, whatever they came in with would be worth the risk for me to captive breed them. That's all I'm trying to say. So
so
is that the same with green tree pythons or the red-tailed rat snakes?
so funny. I had this conversation with another green tree person the other day. So green tree pythons have fallen heavily into designer lineage. So it's crossbreeding a bunch of different localities.
Yeah.
Not saying they're completely gone, but it's coming to a point where a locality is a lot harder to find without them being crossed. So pure lineage doesn't exist the same like it used to. So bringing in the green trees for lineage reasons makes sense to me. So we still have pure localities within the hobby. So that's the important aspect of that. As for the oxycephalum, the Borneo specific ones come and naturally come in yellow, they come in blue, they come in silver, and that's people want that, and they're going to keep getting purchased and keep dying, keep getting purchased, keep dying because ooh, big bright blue snake or big bright yellow snake, you know.
Right.
So they desperately need to get figured out and captive bred quickly. Like I produced two. It was one female and two different males. I produced yellow lineage Borneos, I guess we'll call it, and I've probably got about 5 clutches now out in the world somewhere just to make sure the captive population, I guess we'll say, is satisfied to people, and they're not being purchased as often from the wild to prevent these issues from happening.
I got you. So
Yeah.
so when you do your imports, and I'm sure we probably already touched on this. So when you do your imports and you do all your vet work and study, and I already know the answer to this, but you make it quite aware to people. There's this risk. There's that risk.
Yep.
People know. When people, I guess what I'm trying to say is, when people want imported wild caught animals, at that point you got to know there's some risk, whether
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
whether it's dehydration or nido, there's a risk.
Whether it's captive bred, captive farmed, wild caught, if it's all from the country of origin,
Right.
at risk. Like you have people in North America that have snake fungal disease issues in their captive bred stock because you're in their native origin. It's just risk, right? No,
Right.
snake fungal disease isn't as prevalent, but it has come across, it has happened. And it's things that people just have to keep in mind. Like be smart about your purchases. Don't buy a bunch of animals for fun thinking they're all going to survive, especially if they're like, I don't know, house geckos or whatever. Like they're feeder geckos. I hate to
Yeah.
say that, but they are known for this, and you have to get like 100 of them for a chunk for them to survive. I get house geckos for feeders, knowing, yeah, they're not gonna be around too long, so they're feeders. And
Right.
it's just the name of the game when it comes to Indonesia. Like no matter who you get from, expect the worst. It's not new knowledge. It's splattered across the internet. Everybody knows this is a problem. So don't be naive and be so shocked and complaining to the world that, oh my God, my snake is sick. Like, it sucks. And I agree, that really sucks. And that shouldn't be the case.
Well, of course, you're an animal lover, so.
Yeah, and I'm doing this because I love what I do. I love making people's dreams like come true with the animals they want, but I cannot control what nature does. Chris cannot control what nature does. So it's just how it is. And be smart with your quarantine practice. I'm going to do my due diligence. Chris is going to do his due diligence, but we could only do so much. And with the NIDO thing, I'm going to be doing tests. If they come back negative, it doesn't mean they don't have it still. But at that point, once you get the animal, it's all on you because I don't know what you're bringing in after that.
Right.
Right? Like maybe it was clean and then you got something else and that one was positive and now the cross-contaminated each other. And so we've made an agreement. If anything comes back positive with me, the buyer will have a credit amount to be able to figure out something else for next year. So we're doing our best for that. And because of that, these shipments are always end of year now and to protect everybody.
Yeah. So how many shipments do you import per year on average?
Europe is 3 on average, sometimes 4. And the odd rare occasion, I'll do one from China. And then Indo is once a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with I mean, this is a monitor podcast, so I got to get back to monitors here. It was all great, but so I was just on the phone with a friend of mine, and he's really having trouble with Kimberly rocks, like most people do hatching their eggs. I mean, they throw enough eggs at you to where I was able to figure it out and get some hatchlings, but he's really having a hard time. And like I said to him, I'm like, hey, George, if you really love these animals, and I said, I might suggest to you that the gene pool here in the United States is very, very shallow, that maybe if there's any way you could reach out to Europe, in a European collection, get some of their captive borns, import 10 of them, 10 young hatchlings or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That, raise them and see if they're any better because Kimberly rocks, we've been breeding them here for a long time. And, it only seems that the last 5-10 years, it's really becoming more and more difficult to hatch the eggs.
Yeah.
And I personally, I'm not from the school where, you shouldn't breed, brother and sister as far as reptiles go. I'm like, they're not humans. They do this in the wild. They don't all, when the males become mature, they don't all set out for new territories. They're in with the same grouping, and I'm sure there's cousins and whatever.
Well, locality proves that, like island localities, right?
Right, exactly. So my point for my friend George was his wife is a German, and I was like, hey, if you know anybody over there, maybe if you can get you an import of European Glauerdi, maybe try there if you're really dead set on, he loves them. He wants to work with them. He's very disappointed with what he has in captivity here now. But do you ever import like Glauerdi from Europe or any other markets?
So that's a tricky, unfortunate question. So when it comes to the whole breeding thing, like it could be genetics, it could be just the food they're eating, it could be whatever, right? Unfortunately with Kimberleys and all the Australian stuff, well, we all know the Lacey Act is in the way for the States. I could bring them into Canada. I brought in many Ackies into Canada. I've brought in Gil and I have brought in the Kimberleys once, but past that, it's just for Canada because majority of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife officers don't want them due to the law of the Lacey Act.
So it's a United States thing.
Correct. So there's some officers that used to allow it. Like I used to be able to completely legally export shinglebacks, for example. No problems. because we had proof of captive bred generations at that point in time, even with the CITES permits, everything. They got cleared, but when officers change, they have a different mindset, and they're like, no. So
Yep.
today it is law. We have to abide by it. It just sucks because if we're very obviously captive born and bred, you're only going to promote issues and smuggling by not allowing these animals through.
Absolutely.
Right? And so unfortunately, the States is kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place with that kind of thing because they don't want Australian stuff leaving. They don't want Australian stuff going in. So you're just stuck with the same things over and over and over again. That's just going to cause chaos and more ruin on the animals themselves they're trying to protect in Australia, despite them being in Canada, despite them being to Europe, like wherever they are, right?
Right.
So it's just self-destruction within the country for no reason.
Yep. So so you're done. You said you were done imports for this year.
Correct.
And when will you expect more imports from wherever?
So
Early 2026 or?
So I don't do anything from November to March for multiple reasons. This helped me totally revamp the import room, get it nice and tidy and clean. Like I clean it after every shipment, but just to really do a deep down sanitization and everything. Winter is in the way, obviously, because it's very cold here. So between winter, lack of shipping, the holidays cause a very high risk in shipping because you know how FedEx gets delays a lot come December. And then February is just far too cold. So my next shipment's going to probably be in April from Europe.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And like you said, most of that is captive born European.
Correct. A lot of cool stuff come out of Europe. I think things I've never heard of in my life. And it really tickles my fancy because I love to nerd out and learn new things. So if I have one of my long-term sellers message me, he's like, hey, I have these animals for this person. Can you send them along? I'm like, sure, but what the heck is this? You know? And so, do a lot of research into it, make sure, you know, they're housed appropriately here, where their diet is. I feed them accordingly. And because I'm sure, as you guys know, like I have a bit of extension of feeders. I'm not just your basic rodents and bugs kind of thing. Like I always have frogs, lizards, fish, everything that basically is possible, and then ants.
Yep. Wow. That's that whole, like Mason Barnes recently got some horned toads, and we were talking, and he was telling me about like I think they're harvester ants that he uses, and like I guess if you're not careful, those harvester ants can actually kill your animals, or you know, it's just so crazy to me. But while we got you here, and we're getting close to wrapping up, I just wanted to say, man, a big congratulations to you on breeding speckled racers. I'm a high metabolism colubrid guy. I love them, and yeah, that to me that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, I do miss them. I wish I didn't have to get rid of them when I moved.
So let me ask you this: so there's the Nicaraguan Drymobius, I believe is their. So like, and of course, this is just my dumb luck. It's like, you know, when I take my wife to buy a wedding ring, you know, she wants the small one, and I'm like, oh, we're gonna get the big one, and then we decide finally on the medium one. However, I don't really want to do that with speckled racers. Of course, Uncle Mike wants the ones from South Texas, which would probably have me going to jail. But those are the ones that I love.
Yeah. So your best bet they're the Mexican localities and northern Nicaraguan ones are the ones that have the blues and yellows mixed in. I actually like those the most personally. Those are the bunch I had for a while. The Nicaraguans are nice. I mean, like the central Nicaraguans, like they're just like yellow and black mostly. But the further north you go, like to Texas, the more blue they get, right?
Yeah.
So when you have like that fine line between like Texas and Nicaragua, right smack in the middle, you get the ones that like the blue heads and green mid body and yellow like tail, I guess. They are just, I've had them with oranges in them. It's just like a moving rainbow. It's nice.
Yeah, it's quite a beautiful species. And again, I don't know if it boils down to rarity in the wild, but man, again, if it is rarity in the wild, why they wouldn't put at least a pair in the hands of someone like yourself who would actually breed them and produce them? And of course, the whole reintroduced into the wild thing, that gets, there's legalities and issues with that. However, if you can produce them in captivity, I say that'll take strain off of wild collecting, poaching, and whatnot, and you'd satisfy two needs.
And they're very straightforward. Like even babies, they get going when you just feed them like diced up fish or frog or something, and you mix binkies in it, and you get the odd annoying one that doesn't want to like everything, but as long as you feed them often, they do well. They do really well. But past that, like I think I want to know if they're so-called rare in the wild. Like I don't know enough to really say, but because of naturally shy nature and they're very fast, I think plays a big role in that, right?
Yep. You might be standing right next to a den of them and not even know it.
Yeah, and if they take off and a catcher goes to grab them, and usually that's by the tail, they actually drop their tail.
Wow.
Yeah, so they one of the few, if only, I don't know, snakes that could actually drop their tail like a lizard.
Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy, but if it makes sense, if if they're being preyed upon in the wild and they're so fast that the last chance an animal would get would be the tail. Yeah, you don't want to lose your life because you can't drop your tail. So it makes sense.
It actually grows back too, very slowly, but
like a lizard, would it be different than the normal, or does it come back colored and everything?
So the one girl I got, she was obviously wild caught, and she had the little nub tail. I'd say it took about a year, and it started off like a typical like lizard, grayish black, and then it started growing and it got some color. Like you could tell it was regenerated. But it's not as obvious as a lizard's regen.
I got you. Yeah. So and I'm sure your plans for this year, NARBC, I'll be seeing you at Tinley.
March, probably not. October, probably yes.
All right. And then hopefully you and your other half, and notice I didn't say better half, because you're the better half. Hopefully we'll see you guys at Monitor Fest in 2026. That would be great.
Yeah, when is it?
That's unfortunately
end of May, isn't it? End of May.
Yeah, it's usually what is that? Late Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah. As long as I don't have any shipments going on.
It's a good time. I mean, Kat, you can vouch for it.
Yeah, it's great. There's so many people. I think this last time was the most people that have ever been there. It was a little crazy. It was actually too many people for me. I was like trying to hide. It was a lot, but it was fun. Yeah. People come from all over the country, and we just talk about monitor lizards all day. And we look at Brian Waterloo's collection. He's got some great animals, beautiful cages. It's just a really fun time.
It is. It's a real fun time. I wish there was more than one a year, but it is what it is.
But that's kind of what makes it sometimes, right? Just
something to look forward to.
Yeah, exactly.
But we're at, and I feel like I'm cheating you. We're at like an hour and 7 minutes. We had a rough start. But man, Ashley, this was so great to have you on here and get your take on all this stuff, and keep doing what you're doing. And I always enjoy talking to you and seeing you at Tinley, and it won't be no different this year.
Absolutely, I agree. I appreciate it.
Kat, anything you want to add?
Yeah. So where can people find you on social media? What if they want to contact you, or all of that? Why don't you tell everybody?
Oh gosh. So the best place to contact me is actually my personal Facebook page, because I always see the messages there. For some reason, my business pages, and especially my email things, like to go to spam. But you can contact me on my business page, Northern Lights Reptile Imports, and eventually I'll see it. But those are like the two best spots would be there. Instagram is possible as well, but my personal profile will be the quickest response you'll get.
And one more question before we cut out here. So you import, and then when you sell your wares, you're not individually. Do you have distributors, or how does that work?
In terms of like the animals, you mean?
Yeah.
So how it works, I'm broker more than anything. So how it works is basically people I worked with for the last 5 to 10 years contact me with a list about 2 to 3 months per my shipments. I post on my website like, hey, this is what's available, and they're usually at the seller breeder's cost plus like a finder's fee. Essentially, I put on top of it because end of the day, these are not my animals I'm selling. I am not going to profit to that degree on those animals. So there's a broker fee on it, and whatever people want, they give me a deposit. I then forward that to the seller, and then only those animals come in. So I'm quite literally just brokering the money from buyer to seller in this case.
And,
so
go on.
Base list of the reptiles, right?
So I guess my question is, within Canada, or do you? So you're mainly dealing to Canadian people?
Oh, actually, no. Mass 80% American.
Yeah, well, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, no. Most of them go to the States. My good friend, Josh Alder, of course.
Yeah.
He's
a
the
great guy. Yeah.
Like I have a lot of American customers. I'd say it's split probably 60% American, but 80% of the animals do go to the States.
I gotcha. Yeah, I was kind of hitting around at you saying Empire Exotics, Josh Alder.
Yeah.
Because that's just what I do. I like to help my friends and shit. So, but very cool. Again, again with Josh, I always look forward to seeing his 50 tables or whatever he's got of animals. So, again, it's very cool to see all this stuff, and then just to know you're such a young woman doing this. It's like I really like Kat too. Everyone thinks reptiles like idiots like me with the beard and tattoos. It's so cool that that there's very knowledgeable women in this, and I always like to highlight them as well.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So, again, any comments, Kat, or anything you want to get to?
I was just going to say thank you so much for coming on and talking to everybody, because I really feel like, most of us long-term keepers, we know a lot of this stuff already, but for the people that are just, they're still learning and, trying to wonder about, where are my animals coming from and what should I expect? You did a great job explaining all of that and everything.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for that.
And I just want to...
Oh, go on, Kat. Go on.
No, Ashley was talking. Yeah.
Okay, go on.
Oh, okay. I just want to make it clear, despite the risks that are always involved with importation, whether it's shipping or health, it's a very small, minimal issue, despite how much we talked about it. I don't want that to scare anyone away, because it's actually a very rewarding, very fun experience to get animals from across the globe. And more often than not, you're A++. There's nothing to worry about. You're at equal risk of buying something the next state over or the next province over. There's always a potential risk of issues. And I just want to make that very clear. Don't fret. There's always a way. There's always a fix. And more often than not, things are immaculate. So yeah.
Well, so again, thank you for coming on, Ashley. This was a great episode. Thank you, as always, Kat, and I'm glad you were able to make it when you did. I know you had to work today, so I appreciate you getting out there and getting it for Uncle Mike here. I really appreciate that, because I'm a knucklehead. I wouldn't even know how to turn this thing on and off. I'm getting good at turning it on and off, but I can't do all that stuff that you do. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Again, so from Kathy Brown, Uncle Mike, myself, and Ashley here, All Monitor Talk podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. And geez, let me think. I believe our next guest is Jim Miller. So everyone stay tuned for Jim Miller. He's doing some really cool, huge cage builds. We're going to talk about that and how important, it is getting all your husbandry dialed in. And maybe, like we always say with monitor lizards, less is more. And what we mean by that is if you keep less animals, you could more properly take care of them, because monitor lizards are a lot of work, as most of you know. So less is more.
For sure.
Appreciate you guys, and thank you again, Ashley. Thank you, Kat.
Anytime. Happy to be here. Thank you.
I hope everyone has a great weekend.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.